Good evening, Lamoille County Democrats. We're really excited to have you here for our November meeting. Thanks so much for joining on this fine Veterans Day. We are so thrilled today to have two amazing speakers. We're going to open it up with a conversation with Representative Pugh and Lucy Leriche, who works at Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. Today, we're going to be talking about Proposition 5, which would guarantee, if it passes, will guarantee the right to reproductive liberty. So we're really excited to be talking about that today. And I will just get it started. I'm going to let Representative Pugh and Lucy introduce themselves. So Representative Pugh or Ann, do you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. I'm Representative Ann Pugh. Ann is fine. I've been a Vermont legislator since 1993, and I chair the House Human Services Committee, and am thrilled that Representative Dan Noyes is a member of the committee and an important member of the committee. I also always say I'm a social worker.
Me too.
I presume you just want us to introduce ourselves and then go forward.
That's great. Well, yeah, maybe Lucy, do you want to introduce yourself, and then whichever one of you wants to kick it off, that'd be great.
Sure. I prepared a few slides just because, I didn't know how much you wanted to look at a little tiny Zoom box speaking at you. But my name is Lucy Leriche. I am the Vice President of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood Northern New England, Vermont, and Planned Parenthood Vermont Action Fund. I come to you today in a C3 non-political capacity, where I'm just going to talk about the policy and process around the proposed constitutional amendment. In my background, I actually served with Representative Pugh in the legislature. I served from 2005 to 2012. And during that time, I served on the Healthcare Committee, as well as in leadership as the assistant majority leader and the majority leader. And then I went to work in the Shumlin administration as eventually the Secretary of the Commerce and Community Development Agency, before I went to work in my current role at Planned Parenthood Northern New England. And before all of that, I was the executive director of the Lamoille Housing Partnership, where we created all kinds of affordable housing in the Lamoille Valley region. When I was in the legislature, I served in the Caledonia district, Caledonia 2, Hardwick, Walden, and Stannard, because I was living in Hardwick at that time. But I have since relocated to Hyde Park. So back to Lamoille County, where I went to Lamoille Union High School. This is like my place.
So Lucy, I'm wondering if I should start, and then you can correct everything that I say and reinforce whatever it is.
That sounds good. Yeah, I can sort of repeat, reiterate, and whatever, cheerlead, add on.
I want to start by reading what Article 22 is. That an individual's right to personal reproductive autonomy is separate to the liberty and dignity to determine one's own life course, and shall not be denied or infringed unless justified by a compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means. It's a single sentence that we would be adding to our Vermont Constitution, but it is one that is so very important, and even more important when we see what is happening nationally. If passed by the voters, it would amend the state constitution to enshrine personal reproductive liberty as a fundamental right, and would be the umbrella under which all other state statutes and laws about reproductive liberty would fall and would stand under. Personal reproductive liberty. Now, what is that? It's a big word. It's more than just access to abortion. It's about freedom. It's about freedom for those of us who call Vermont home to decide when and whether to have children, to the freedom to become pregnant and carry a pregnancy to term, to choose or refuse sterilization, and to choose or refuse contraception. The importance of Proposition 5, I believe, cannot be understated. On some level, it is nothing new in terms of the way that Vermont has handled decisions around reproductive liberty for probably the past 50 years. Our policy has recognized that decisions related to reproductive health care and abortion are deeply personal and private and best left to the individual and their healthcare provider, as opposed to a group of strangers in the legislature. Proposition, I mean, it keeps things the way they have been now and the way they've been for the past 50 years. And I just think that it's important at this point to bring it to the voters, and so that Vermonters have no question where Vermont stands with regard to its core values and commitments. And that's why I'm very proud to be here to answer your questions and to take it to the House floor.
Great. Thank you so much, Anne. Well, we will take questions, but why don't we kick it over to Lucy if you'd like to talk for a little bit, and then we can take questions.
Sure. Can you give me the ability to share my screen?
Yeah, let me just, I'll make you a co-host. Oh, Dolan, is that the best way to do it?
No, it's already done.
Nope. Oh, already done.
Oh, great.
Dolan's always on it.
So is that loading for you all? Can you see that?
Nope.
No.
There you go.
Okay. Great. So this is, as Representative Pugh described, this is not a new concept. For the last 50 years since the Roe decision was handed down in 1973, Vermont has not had anything on the books, any law, any restrictions or provisions in favor of abortion access whatsoever. We have relied on the Roe decision. Since President Trump has been able to put 3 new people on the US Supreme Court, we know that the Roe decision is on very, very thin ice, very shaky ground. In fact, there's a Mississippi case that the Supreme Court has agreed to take a look at and take up, then their arguments are on December 1st. And in that Mississippi case, many believe that the Supreme Court will take the step to either overturn Roe or basically gut it. Those oral arguments happening in December with their decision being handed down, expected, late spring, early summer. So what that means for Vermont and for every other state in the nation, in fact, is that the choice to allow abortion or not will fall to each individual state. And that is why the Reproductive Liberty Amendment, an amendment to the Vermont Constitution, is so timely. This is just a slide describing who we are and what we do. I don't know what just happened there.
Lucy, do you want to put it, if you put it in present mode, I think we can see it a little bit better. It's in
sure.
It's on, yeah, there you go.
Oh, there it is. It was getting hidden. That's really weird. I don't know where those lines came from just now.
Weird.
Yeah, see, you see those orange lines? I hit something. Wow. Oh, and then, isn't that weird? Anyway, I apologize for that.
No, it happened to me actually on another presentation that I did. I don't know why it came up. It happened to me on another thing too. So.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm not alone there. So we're the largest provider of sexuality and reproductive health care, and we're the education provider and advocate in Northern New England. I should have probably started off by saying that. I often assume that people know who Planned Parenthood is and what we do, but yeah, that is it. I will keep moving, especially since there's a Planned Parenthood Health Center right in Hyde Park Village. And here's the language that Representative Pugh started out by reading, and so you can see it, see the text as well. The reproductive liberty, and I'm going to read it again because I think it's really elegant, and I think it's really important to just sort of take it in. The Reproductive Liberty Amendment, Prop 5, or the RLA, is a proposed constitutional amendment that would protect every Vermonter's right to make their reproductive decisions, including whether and when to become a parent, use temporary or permanent birth control, or seek abortion care. Sorry, this is actually the language. That an individual's right to personal reproductive autonomy is central to the liberty and dignity to determine one's own life course, and shall not be denied or infringed unless justified by a compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means. And sometimes people ask about this last part, and shall not be denied or infringed unless justified by a compelling state interest. What this means is that when opposition claim that this will be in our law forever and that there's no way to change it, in fact, if the state of Vermont finds some kind of compelling interest to regulate this right to reproductive autonomy, they do have the right to do it. This is called the strict scrutiny standard in judicial review. It is the most stringent of all judicial standards. So what it means is that if the state has an interest and determines they have an interest through the courts, the remedy that they have to put forward has to be really narrowly tailored and to only address their specific underlying interest and not any broader than that. So it's a very protective, the language is very protective of the right. It creates a fundamental right. And I think most people agree that important medical decisions should be guided by a patient's health and well-being and not by a politician's beliefs. So I talked a little bit about the US Supreme Court and the fact that they're going to be hearing a 15-week ban on a Mississippi case. And this is a really important moment in history. For nearly 50 years, Americans have had this right. And by this spring, this right may be gone. So passing the Reproductive Liberty Amendment, by doing this, we can protect reproductive liberty in Vermont long-term, no matter what happens in Washington, D.C. And this is just a little graphic on the process. In 2019, it was introduced and it was passed by the House and Senate. Last year, the Senate took it up again. This year, the House will consider it a second time. And then if it passes in the House this year, it will go to the public on the general election ballot. The process for amending a state constitution is that it has to pass both chambers in 2 consecutive biennium. And that's all I had. So yeah, and I will stop sharing.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Lucy. Really appreciate that presentation. And we can now open it up to Q&A. I guess I'll just start. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Anne. This is really, really instructive. And I'm really excited to see what happens in the House and in your committee this upcoming session. I guess I'll just start off with a question. I would love to hear from each of you, what we're expecting in terms of opposition to this, and particularly interested to hear what we'll hear in your committee. I know Dan has shared that he is a little bit about his experience with that before, but would love to hear what you're expecting.
I guess I'll begin by saying I am expecting that it will pass the committee. It passed the committee overwhelmingly 2 years ago, and we have 2 new members on the committee, and I am aware that they support this. So there is not there's not a concern that it won't pass the committee. What we're going to hear is a repeat, I think, of what we heard the last biennium, which is that it will allow abortion on demand. They will focus the discussion on abortion, not on reproductive liberty, and not on the freedom to make any reproductive decision. And they will, the opponents will have a fundamental disagreement about the right of individuals to make their own decisions about this. And they will say that that is, that shouldn't happen. And they will talk about things that aren't real. They'll talk about procedures that don't happen. They'll they'll create lots of scenarios of things that either maybe happened in another state or that are just their concerns and their fears. And my response is, we've had this freedom for the past 50 years, and we have not seen those horror stories in Vermont.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Representative Pugh. I think that's exactly sort of the suite of arguments the opposition is likely to make, trying to sow seeds of confusion, try to claim that we don't know there are going to be unintended consequences. I want to be clear with this group, and we'll hopefully be able to be clear with Vermonters. There's no confusion here. This amendment language has had lots of legal review, and what we have heard very clearly is that the amendment would protect a person's right to get pregnant and carry that pregnancy to term, to choose or refuse voluntary or permanent sterilization, and to choose or refuse abortion. So it is in fact very clear. And we do, I think we should probably expect and be ready for some out-of-state interference, attempted out-of-state interference with this amendment.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. Well, any other questions? I'll open it up now to everybody. Yeah, Helene? Oh, you're muted.
Has anyone done a survey of the public's opinion about this?
Yeah, so Planned Parenthood Action Fund commissioned some research. We did a poll of Vermont voters, and we oversampled 100 Republicans. The poll itself, the base poll was 800 voters, which was a large sample, supposedly. I don't know all that much about polling. And the GOP were overrepresented by 100, and we also overrepresented age under 30 by 100. And what we found were that Vermonters were overwhelmingly supportive of the amendment. More than close to 75% of people surveyed, including Republicans and independents, were supportive of the amendment. The support was stronger among Democrats and progressives, but there was still support across the political spectrum in Vermont for the amendment language.
The 75 closing total percentage, including all the three groups, was close to 75% in favor.
That's correct. Among everyone who was surveyed, which was 1,000 people, the overall response was around 75%. And that changed a little depending on whether or not the people polled heard our messages first or opposition messages first. But even when people heard the opposition messages first, we still won by like 20 points.
You repeat. I'm sorry, I'm deaf and I'm having trouble.
We were still ahead by about 20 points, even when people polled heard the opposition messages, only opposition messages.
Thank you.
Yeah, so right now the support is very strong. Nonetheless, we feel very strongly that we can't take this for granted, because we know the power of misinformation and we know the power of scare tactics. And with enough money flooding the airwaves, we know that opposition messages can infiltrate and have and start eroding support. So we are certainly keeping that in mind as we think about the work ahead of us.
Are you considering, the misinformation that gets passed on by social media and so forth? Have you thought of how you're going to deal with it?
Yeah, we will be investing in a digital campaign, and we will hopefully be able to recruit digital ambassadors, people who are really active on social media, people who are influencers on social media, who support the amendment, to make sure that their friends and their social media contacts are well informed of the facts before they vote on the amendment.
We can all, in Lamoille Dems, we can post about Prop 5 when it goes to voters. Other questions? Lee, did you have one?
Yeah, I was thinking, I didn't hear anything in regards to age restrictions or any language referring to adults. And as somebody who's taught high schoolers before, my question would be, how would this apply to individuals under 18? And would the minors' parents have any say into access to abortion for, say, a 16-year-old, 17-year-old seeking one?
Lee,
Yeah.
by policy and practice, Vermont has left those decisions to the individual and their healthcare provider. The data is very clear that the majority of youth who are faced with whether or not to have an abortion usually speak to someone. But the policy, but the practice, and then the law that we passed in terms of age 57 was to mirror what had been the practice, which was to leave it as a healthcare decision.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? Lucy, I would love to hear if you're able to share anything more about the campaign that you're planning. You're here in a C3 role, so I don't know what you're able to share, but if you are.
Yeah, I am here in a C3 role. I just want to be very careful that I'm not coordinating or doing anything to influence the outcome of an election. But I can tell you that Planned Parenthood, Northern New England, and Planned Parenthood Vermont Action Fund did hire a campaign manager to work with me and my team to develop and execute a campaign plan. And part of that includes getting endorsements, which is totally C3 friendly. The IRS considers ballot measures direct lobbying, which is a C3 permissible activity. So I'm pretty sure I can talk about that. And it's just Vermont campaign finance law treats things a little differently. But so we'll have a group of organizations, and we're continuing to grow that group of organizations who are creating a coalition to execute the campaign and to support Prop 5 to the general public. And we also have, a tiered system for coalition support. So people can be on an executive committee, people can be endorsers, and people can just, do whatever support they want to do individually without any coordination with us. So it is, it's pretty exciting. Sorry, go ahead, Representative Pugh.
No, I was going to say that I would frame or I would add to what is this, what will people do who support it? I fully support this. And as chair of the Human Services Committee, I will make sure that there is appropriate science-based, medical, health-based testimony, at the same time giving the people who are opposed to this the opportunity to share their fears and their concerns and their opposition, so that in terms of a campaign in support of it, there cannot be an argument that people in opposition did not get a chance to voice their concern. They had full opportunity 2 years ago when they testified in front of the committee, and when we had a public hearing 2 years ago, there was equal opportunity. So it's not quite perhaps, Scott, what you were talking about in terms of a campaign, but I do think that it is important that all voices are able to be heard. A piece of, I guess, information that's totally off of the campaign piece. And Lee, your question made me sort of think about this, so that people understand the language cannot be changed. The language that we read, unlike almost anything else that comes before a committee or comes before the House and the Senate, you know, we can take our red pen and change it all around. The Senate wrote this, and once the Senate wrote it and voted it out and it came to the House, our job was to assess, take testimony as to whether or not the Senate had done its due diligence. And so just to let you know that.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you, Anne. Well, we have two other representatives in the room, Representative Dan Noyes and Representative Dave Iacovone. I don't know if you all have any comments on the process, or Dan, how your experience in the committee has been.
Yeah, I mean, we've taken quite a bit of testimony. We have public testimony where we met with the Judiciary Committee 2 years ago, and I believe we'll be doing the same, and we'll have a public hearing coming up this January. So looking forward to getting back to the legislature for sure.
Dave, any comments?
Thanks, Scott. Thanks to Representative Pugh and Lucy for your time and sharing your insights on this. It's very helpful. As I encounter constituents who are concerned about this, very passionate, it helps a little, I think, when I tell them what better situation than allowing you to have a vote on this, for you to have a say, and something so controversial. We don't usually do legislation by public opinion, if you will, or referendum, but this is a unique opportunity. And as opposed to 180 well-intentioned people weighing in on it, everybody gets a voice on it. And that helps with some people, and it does me. And it helps. And I think that the committee's done a great job of sifting through this and managing it in a way that's really respectful to people and allows everybody to have a voice. That's important to me. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, any other questions that we have for Anne and for Lucy?
I will just add that I did put the Vermont Action Fund, along with these other organizations, has created a new organization. And we have a website, and there it is, in case you want to check it out.
Awesome. Thanks, Lucy. Well, if we don't have any more questions, just want to thank Anne and Lucy. Thank you so much for your tremendous work on this. I'm really excited to see what happens with Prop 5. I know we're all excited, and we will be cheerleading you on, and let us know if we can be supportive in any way.
Scott, I
yeah.
just want to say thank you. Thank you for inviting, I'll speak for myself, for inviting me. And while you have two fabulous House members with my Representative Iacovone, do not be insulted, but with my favorite committee member, which is Representative Dan Noyes, but followed with a very close second with Representative David Iacovone, who sits on appropriations. I know you can get your questions answered by the two of them, but if anyone wants to follow up with me, I am more than happy to talk with you, I'm sorry, if you are vaccinated, and to meet with you in person, if we can find time, and talk more about this.
Yeah, and likewise, Scott, thanks so much, everyone, for creating this space for us to come, for Representative Pugh and I to come and talk about this really important historic moment. The other one thing that has not been mentioned yet tonight is that if this passes in the Vermont State Constitution, Vermont will be the first state in the nation to proactively amend its constitution to guarantee this right. So it is really exciting to us, and we feel like very, very important as a human rights issue. And I want to also just echo the offer to just be in touch if anyone wants to learn more about the effort. We'd love to connect.
Great. Well, we won't, Lucy and Ann, we won't bore you with the rest of our meeting, but we really, really appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Good to see you, Anne.